Patch 13.10 is right around the corner, and this patch has some of the biggest changes that I've ever seen in League of Legends, which is pretty surprising to say considering we're kind of in the middle of the season right now. But these changes are so big that, you would typically see these big of changes in the off season. Like, these are pre-season level changes. I don't necessarily know why they're making these changes, but I guess we don't have too much time to think about why. We just have to focus on the changes themselves and try to help prepare ourselves as best as we possibly can, so that we know what to build going into patch 13.10, because the game is really going to be a whole lot different. I'm a support main. I will obviously be going over the support changes specifically, because that's where I have the most amount of knowledge. I don't want to feed you guys information about changes that I don't really have knowledge about, but support's my bread and butter, so that's where we are going today. First things first, we have the Chalice of Blessing. This is going to be a new item in the game, and it's going to be a component item. So when it comes to components for enchanter items before, there was kind of just these four up here. You have the Forbidden Idol, you have the Bandleglass Mirror, you have the Bracer, and then you have the Kindle Gem. So not a whole lot of diversity. And when it does come to these components, there's these two on the left, which are mana regen items, and these ones on the right, which are more so focused on health. This is going to be pretty interesting because the Chalice is a little bit of both. So with these components, it's going to allow us to have a little bit more diversity in the sense of, okay, do I want to build specifically magic or mana regen? Do I want specifically health? Do I want a little bit of both? And if the answer that you want is a little bit of both, you're going to go with the Chalice of Blessing. It's going to give health. It's also going to give mana regen. Important to note here that this does not offer any ability haste. So like the Bandleglass Mirror does, the Kindle Gem does. So you also have to take that into account. If you want CDR, you probably have to go with a different component. If you don't, if you want the health and mana regen, this is going to be a good option. Going to be building out of the Ruby Crystal and the Fairy Charm. I'm excited to see this implemented into the game, as I think diversity is always important, which you'll probably hear me echo a lot throughout this game, but not just in full component or full items, but also in the components. Another component here is going to be the Lifewell Pendant. This is going to be a component that builds into some of the tankier support items. And when it comes to tankier support items, again, not a whole lot of diversity. We have the Bracer, we have the Kindle Gem, we also have the Aegis. So the Lifewell Pendant is going to give 150 health, armor, base health, regen. So this is going to be a bit more expensive in between the Kindle Gem and the Aegis. No CDR here once again, which is another thing you'll hear me talking about a lot in this video. It does look like Riot, after I looked ahead at some of the changes, Riot does not want tanks to have as much ability haste, which is really, really surprising to me, because I think tanks and engaged supports having ability haste allows them to make plays more often, which makes the game more exciting, but not the direction that they're going. So some of the tank items for supports don't have CDR in them anymore, which is why this component here also does not have CDR. So going to be interesting to see the state of tanks moving forward, because they might be tankier, but at the same time, they are not going to have as much playmaking ability. Up next, this is the first new full item introduced here. Echoes of Helia, 2300 gold mythic item. Another thing that you'll see consistently, 2300. They are dropping the cost a lot for support items. If you look at some of them right now, Chemtech is 23, but Moonstone's 25, Ardent's 25, Staff of Flowing Water's 23. So it looks like they're dropping a lot of them down to that 2300 gold, which is really interesting to see. I think it does come at a cost, obviously, right? You do want to get your items quicker, because you spike quicker in that sense, but at the same time, in order for them to be cheaper, they have to also be weaker. So I think this is overall a good change for the game, making support items a bit cheaper because we want to get to our spikes quicker. I'm a little concerned about how strong they might still be, given that the items overall are a bit weaker. I think it's a healthy change, but we'll have to wait and see. But Echoes of Helia, I'll call it Helia for now, is basically just Unholy Grail, if you guys are familiar with that item, being reintroduced into the game under a different name. I believe Unholy Grail, though, did offer magic resist. This one does not. Pretty much the same item, but without that magic resist. The passive here, damaging a champion, grants a soul shard up to a maximum of 2. Healing or shielding an ally consumes all of the soul shards and restores 40 to 120 based on allies' health. You also gain ability power, mana regen, mythic passive, all that kind of stuff. So this is an item that is going to be really, really good on champions who not only focus on shielding and healing, but can also dish out a good amount of damage. A couple champions that come to mind right away would be someone like Nami, someone like Sona. Again, champions that dish out a lot of damage, but also have that ability to heal and shield, right? Someone like Milio might also come to mind because he does have the healing and shielding power, but Milio doesn't dish out a whole lot of damage. You can, mix in auto attacks and use your Q in fights and stuff like that, but for the most part, you're not. I could see this maybe being useful on Milio if it starts to proc, if you start to gain stacks by using your shield on someone else and getting that burn off through your passive. If it works that way, I could see this being really good on Milio because you're still going to be stacking up through getting that damage, but I'm not sure quite yet. We'll have to wait and see how that mechanic works. But that is another champion that does come to mind. Up next is going to be Locket. So we're going to have to go stat by stat here and see the changes. But we do right off the rip see that it is 200 gold cheaper. Again, support items all getting kind of reduced down to that 2,300 at a cost, though. There are going to be changes to each one of these support items. This one specifically, if we look into it, 200 health is still there, 30 armor, 30 magic resist, but they are swapping out the ability haste, 20 ability haste, for base health regen. Personally, as someone who likes to make a lot of plays when I play support, I would much rather have that ability haste, but again, the direction that they seem to be going is tanks are no longer going to have that much access to ability haste, at least in your mythic item or your first few items. You're really going to have to struggle without that ability haste and try to pick it up later in the game. Not a fan of this change, but it is what it is. Same thing here with the Evenshroud. We'll go change by change here. Drops down 200 gold once again. 200 health is still there. Armor and magic resist are still there, but the exact same change here. Getting the 150 base health regen at the cost of losing that 20 ability haste. Not happy with this change, but it is, again, it's equivalent across the two like main mythic tank support items. That's the direction that they're going, I guess. Moonstone, let's see. 23, my dog is here, hello. 25 to 23, we'll go stat by stat. Again, at that cost of the 200 gold, ability power is going down by 5. Health is going to be the same. Ability haste remains the same. Base mana regen remains the same. So it's just that 5 AP. This honestly seems like an okay change. I think 5 AP for 200 gold is an okay change. But again, a little bit weaker. Just going to hit that spike a little bit sooner. I don't think Moonstone is all too strong of an item right now anyway, so maybe that's why this isn't getting hit as much, just the 5 AP. I think Moonstone will continue to be good on the same champions because there's no big changes here, just a little bit of a hit to the AP. Moving on into Radiant Virtue. This one's kind of a big one because I think Radiant Virtue in the past has been viable on supports, but it's mainly been built on like junglers and top laners and stuff like that because of how expensive it is. It is still going to be an expensive item relative to the other support items that are all sitting at 2,300 now. But so 2,700 is still a bit more expensive, but it's dropping down 500 gold. So we'll have to go stat by stat here and see what's exactly being changed. But it does seem like they want this to be something that's a little bit more viable on supports, something that you can build. I've been building it here and there on Bard, and it takes a long time to get to that spike. Now it's going to be a little easier to get to that spike, but it looks like it's going to be dropping in 50 health. Armor is remaining the same, magic resist the same, and that 10 ability haste. So one thing that's important to note here, though, is if you do want that ability haste on supports, you might have to stretch a little bit. You might have to go a little bit deeper into your pockets. Instead of going for the Evenshroud, instead of going for Locket, spend that additional 400 gold if it's a champion that you think this would still work on. I can even see this maybe working on like Rakan since it's cheaper now if you want to go like a tankier route. And getting that ability haste will be really, really nice. I can see this working on Thresh, Alistar, Blitzcrank, a lot of the tank supports just because of that 500 gold drop off. You're going to be getting there quicker. And again, if you want ability haste, and it's only 10 this time around, not 20 as it was before for a lot of these tank support items. If you want any kind of ability haste at all, this is how you are going to have to get it, especially for your mythic, because it's the only mythic tank support item in the game that has any kind of ability haste in it whatsoever. Up next, Mandate. So Mandate before was a mythic, no longer a mythic, dropping off 200 gold once again. Ability power. So actually, it looks like there's quite a bit of changes here. No longer going to have any health. So this is going to definitely be more of an aggressive item. If you want to start dishing out more damage as a support, this is something that you're going to be building second. You no longer have to get this as a mythic, so you're no longer getting this first. I could see this pairing really, really well with the new Unholy Grail item reintroduced into the game. Again, synergizes really well with champions that want to dish out a lot of damage. So again, the abilities that slow or immobilize a champion deal bonus magic damage. It's only going to be viable on champions that you're actually using to dish out damage. Sona and Nami come to mind once again. And again, you're going to be doing a lot more damage. So the changes here, 15 more AP. The ability haste stays the same, which is nice. The mana regen is still there. You're just losing that health. So a trade-off being less tanky, so you're more viable to getting one shot as someone like Nami or Sona, but being able to dish out more damage. I'm really excited to see this implemented into the game because again, it's no longer a mythic, so you can get this as a second or third item, dish out a lot of damage, and kind of pair this along with some of the other new changes that we have. Staff of the Flowing Water. Kind of similar to Moonstone in the sense that I think this item is a little outclassed by some of the other enchanter items in the game. So the direction that they're going with this, I think, before looking too much into it, I don't think we should see too many changes. Again, Moonstone isn't all that strong, so they only nerfed it by 5 AP with that gold drop-off. Let's see the direction they go with Staff of the Flowing Water. 200 gold knocked off again, so this is a really cheap item, only at 2100. But wow, the AP is down a lot from 50 to 35. Heal and shield power is still there. Base mana regen is down as well, and it gets movement speed. Let's go ahead and see. Healing or shielding another ally grants you both ability power based on level and ability, and also 20 ability haste. Okay, so that is pretty much the same. I don't think we could see the numbers behind here. I guess not. So overall, I'm a little surprised with the direction that they went with Staff of the Flowing Water, just because again, it wasn't all that strong of an item in my opinion. So I wanted to see them maybe drop the price and nerf it a little bit, but this seems like a pretty big change. And I guess there is a bit of a separation here though between Staff of the Flowing Water and Mandate, because neither of these items are mythic. So if you're trying to choose between which one of these to build second or third item, I guess if you just want to provide overall more utility for your team at the sacrifice of doing less damage, because you're only getting that 35 extra AP, you're going to go for something like Staff of the Flowing Water. But if you want to try to take the game into your own hands and dish out more damage, something like Mandate might be a more viable option. Moving on, Ardent Censer. This is also looking pretty cheap. Wow, dropped from 23 to 21. Okay, so same thing as Staff of the Flowing Water, one of the cheaper items. I would also be surprised if the changes aren't similar to Staff of the Flowing Water, but it does look like they are pretty similar. 60 AP to 35. Base mana regen is down, gives that movement speed. Heal and shield power is the same thing. So it looks like the direction that they're going with these two items, Staff of the Flowing Water and Ardent Censer, is these are cheaper options. They're going to provide more utility because you're also getting that movement speed. So maybe something you might want to take on immobile champions because that little bit of extra movement speed might help, or maybe even roaming champions because that extra movement speed helps you get around the map a lot quicker. But definitely something that is cheaper, not as good, more focused on utility than damage. It could also be something that you're building if you're behind in a game, just because even though it's only a 200 gold difference, right, or between building something that's 21 versus 2300, it's so hard to get gold income as a support in the late game stages of the game. So just that 200 gold difference might make you think, okay, maybe I should just buy something cheaper so I can get to my spikes quicker, rather than sitting on gold and waiting to get your the larger item. Could be something to keep in mind, but overall, these are cheaper items that are more focused on utility. Up next, we have Zeke's Convergence. Overall, I think tank supports kind of build this item sometimes, but it's not super popular. Same thing with Knight's Vow. We'll go over those two changes next. Up first is going to be Zeke's. So the changes for Zeke's here, going to be dropped 200 gold as well. So similar across the board for all support items, just getting that cheaper price on them at the cost of what though? Actually, Zeke's is going to be more of a tank item, or at least more of a health item here, getting that bonus from 250 to 350. Armor does get dropped off, so actually not that much of a tank upgrade. If anything, I would consider that to be a bit of a nerf, because I'd much rather have 10 armor than 100 health. Ability haste is still going to be there. Looks like it is going from 250 flat mana to 125 base health regen. One thing that comes to mind immediately is Rakan. I really like building this item on Rakan. And I think you're just going to be a little less tankier, which I'm not too happy about. I also did really enjoy that flat mana, which isn't something you see all too often on support items as a whole. You get a lot of health regen and mana regen, but never really just like flat mana. So this item as a whole, I think, is a little bit weaker now, but it's going to be important because it's a cheap option, only 2,200. And as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of those mythics no longer have the ability haste. So you're going to be without ability haste for the first portion of the game, building your mythic. And then right after that, you might have to go right into Zeke's. Even though it's not the greatest or the best item because you're not as tanky, you get something that's cheap that also provides that ability haste that you're looking for. And looking ahead to Knight's Vow, I think it's going to be pretty similar. Knight's Vow is only getting dropped by 100 gold. But 2,200, same as Zeke's, going to be just as affordable. Health is going to be dropped off from 400 to 350. You are now getting armor on Knight's Vow, though, so I really like that. The ability haste is still there, and the base health regen is down from 200 to 125. Now, these are some changes that I actually really, really like. The health isn't getting dropped that much. You still get the ability haste. You're getting armor now as well, and I will happily sacrifice some health regen for some flat armor. I think this is actually a really, really good item, and I don't see any reason why Knight's Vow wouldn't be just a better option than Zeke's. Of course, neither of these are mythics, so you could go both, but I definitely think that Knight's Vow, moving on forward from 13.10, might be like a solid second item option. Getting that ability haste into your build, it's really cheap, and it's going to make you really tanky. So I think Zeke's might just provide maybe a little bit more. Actually, I was going to try to say a little bit more utility, but I don't really see why Zeke's would ever be better. I think Knight's Vow is just the clear-cut better option. And if you want additional ability haste after that, you could still pick up Zeke's after the Knight's Vow as maybe like a third item after your Mythic in Knight's Vow. So really interested to see how Knight's Vow plays out. But that looks like a really good change to me. Looks like we're running down to the last couple changes here. Up next is going to be the Wardstone, which took me a really long time to figure out how good this item actually is. I believe this is the first season that we've had Wardstone. If not, it was in the game last season. But again, took me a long time to figure out how good it is. This is a very viable third or fourth option build, especially if you are playing in higher ranks. Vision control is always so important in the game in general, but especially in higher ranks. Having the extra control words available at all times to help get vision for your team, control objectives, stuff like that. The changes here, we'll see if it continues to be just as good of an item. 150 health and 10 ability haste is the same thing. You are now getting the mana regen. The passives are still the exact same. But what is different? So now you have a way to upgrade it, actually, which is something I'm really excited to look into, because as good as this item is, it is still pretty cheap in the sense that it was only 1,100 and you're getting minimal stats out of it. So being able to not only build this, but upgrade it is going to make it even better of an item. Definitely see this as a third or fourth option moving on. But now you can upgrade it to the Vigilant Wardstone, which is 2,300. Can only be purchased after completing the support quest. Makes sense. You're going from 150 to 250. Love it. The ability haste stays the same. I would have loved to see it go from 10 to 20, but honestly, the passive that you're getting out of the Wardstone is so good as is, so I guess that's understandable. Base mana regen. This item can store up to 3 purchase control wards, and grants a 20% increase to ability power, ability haste, bonus attack damage, and bonus health, all the way from 8%. This item looks really, really good. I can honestly see tank supports being good still, despite losing a lot of that ability haste in their first item. But I think a build path that might be really viable moving forward for tank supports: get your Mythic, immediately rush Knight's Vow, and then pick up the Wardstone. You're still getting a little bit of ability haste here with the Wardstone compared to going something like Zeke's, which is going to offer 20. But I think this is just a clear-cut better item. This and Knight's Vow a bit better than Zeke's. So that is going to wrap up all of the support changes. Again, as I said at the beginning of this video, huge changes. And I can sit here and pick apart the stats and try to theorize about what might be good. But what I would recommend to all of you guys is do your own research. Maybe wait like a week or two after the patch rolls out, and then look into the builds a little bit and see which items are being built on which champions, and which items have the highest win rates on what champions. Because at the end of the day, I am just one person sitting here trying to theorize, but I don't know everything, right? So thank you guys again for watching to the end of this video. Looking forward to all of these changes. Can't wait to see some more diversity in the game. Hope you guys are looking forward to it too. Thank you guys for watching to the end of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.